the Golightly Marshall Hour on freedomtalkradio.net.
Now, we're on here as well.
Okay, this is show number what?
64.
64. That's the age Solomon was when he died. It's the age Charles was on the eclipse of 2012, which is 942 miles from where I was born. Now, what we're going to talk about is something very, very serious in astronomy terms. We have the tilting of the Earth that has caused, and fortunately for Europe, the 23.5 degrees that the Earth was tilted at has now been, since we was in Europe, we determined that the axis of the Earth was east of London, about 30 to 40 miles north of the latitude of London, which we was in Folkestone, and we saw the sunrise in the east go around the horizon, raise up to above us, and then circle around in late afternoon, come back, and then head towards the east again and set. Now, the only time this can happen is when you're sitting on the North Pole or very close to it. So what this indicates is that the axis of the Earth had moved. Now, the reason it's moved is because we crossed over the Milky Way galaxy on December the 11th, 2011. And at that time, we was taking videos of the moon, and the moon flipped upside down within an hour. People, of course, since then have been saying, independent of us, that the moon has been doing all sorts of strange things. And, of course, it's easy enough to look at the moon today, take a photograph, and then compare it to 10 years ago, where the moon cycle was always the same face towards the sun, towards us rather, and always North and South Pole is always straight up and down. And as soon as we crossed over the Milky Way galaxy, we saw the effect prior to this happening. It was doing some odd things in the moon. Now, since we've crossed over, the Earth itself has done the same thing, and the axis of the Earth has moved. The danger is that because it's being a very finely tuned weather-wise, that if the axis of the Earth changes, then depending on the time of year, for example, Europe would be tilted towards the sun during the summer months, but it's furthest from the sun on July the 4th. So it's a unique thing about how the axis of the Earth determines the weather on the Earth in relationship to the distance to the sun. Australia being in the southern hemisphere, New Zealand and South Africa, because of the tilt being away from the sun, when we go into being closest to the sun in January the 4th, we are in the South Pacific below the equatorial line, so therefore we are tilted away from the sun. So we get our hottest months, February and so forth, as we go past the closest to the distance to the sun, but as I say, we are tilted away. So that's... Now, on the other hand, Europe is on the top of the Earth, and of course it is not looking at the Earth, at the sun. So let's get that straight. I think I said it backwards. The southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, but it's under the equatorial plane of the Earth. Europe, at the same time, January the 4th, is, because of the tilt, is tilted away. If it was the other way around, tilted towards the sun, Europe would be burnt up with temperatures that you would not be able to sustain life. So that's the beautiful part about creation, is that these things are there. I mean, anyone who has half a brain, if he was taught this kind of thing in university, would suddenly realise this is a creator doing this. Now, fortunately, since we've crossed over the equatorial plane, as I said, the moon flipped upside down. Well, the Earth being a huge sphere, 89 times bigger in mass, it couldn't flip that fast. So it's a slow movement. And there was a lot of internet talk that the Earth's going to suddenly flip upside down and there's going to be tidal waves and this, that. It's all bullshit. Because you're in a creation. It's not going to happen. There will be a slow turning of the Earth upside down because we are now in the Milky Way galaxy's northern hemisphere and we will realign. So north will be Australia and south will be Europe. Right, so as this is occurring, we look at Antarctica and there's 3 main stations in Antarctica that is actually on the continent itself. And Nehemiah is in distance to where I was born is the word Rabboni. And it means teacher. So Mary, she senses that the Lord is standing behind her, so she turns and she says, Rabboni, master, and it means teacher. So it's only found once in the entire Bible. Rabboni. So, what's happening? When we go down looking at the cameras, which we've been doing for years now, you can see the light is starting to come at about 8:10, 8:20 in the morning, and it's 10-minute increments. So, they've covered it up with a rag. That's how stupid these people are. Or clever. As we get to about 10:20, the rag, we've got a photograph of the rag being pulled off. So what are we saying here? You've got the camera looking at the station from about 200 metres away. And you can see this huge building on the right-hand side, and then the rag is being removed from the front of the camera. Now, if you was to say, well, if you're going to put a rag in front of a camera and you want it to appear night as it's supposed to be in July, 24 hours a day, then you would put a black piece of material in front of it, not let any light in, make absolutely certain. But the Germans are smarter than that. I think what's happened is they put a rag where the light comes through the rag and it makes the camera look like it's just a grey, and you can see it going from black to grey at about 8:20 in the morning, so therefore the sun's come up.
Yeah, it looks like a fog. That's what I thought.
Looks like a fog. That's what we thought at the first place. It looked like a fog.
Until Yao pointed out that fog doesn't form.
You shouldn't have fog forming in Antarctica unless the temperature's gone up. Now, this goes into several areas, but let's get this other one out the way first. We see the rag being moved. So as the snapshots are every 10 minutes, so at the exact moment that the camera takes a snapshot, they're moving the rag, and half of the rag is seen in the camera, and on the right-hand side, you can see the station in bright sunlight. The next 10 minutes is all bright sunlight, blinding sunlight, and that goes through. So we worked out that the night and day duration, which should not be happening at all.
Yes, according to the Wikipedia, and yeah, I had this up on another. Have you got it open still on your computer?
Yeah.
We'll zoom in on it.
But I've made a video of all this anyhow, so we can we'll upload that, and you can go and have a look at it, and you can see the rag in front of the camera and all that kind of thing. You see what I'm talking about? Because a lot of you people out there are pretty stupid, right? And you have to be shown, and even when you see it, you still don't get it. A lot of you, especially if you're American. So, oh Jesus, oh.
Yeah, anyway, so Wikipedia, the chart during the months of May and July, there should be 0 daylight hours, 90 daylight hours for the month of May, and then 93 daylight hours for the entire month of August. So this is only 3 hours per day anyway. And yet here we are in July, and we counted 9 hours of daylight.
9 hours of sunlight. So that means that what I've been saying to you can now be verified, and that is to look at Nehemiah itself. We've got the films of it. From this point onwards, they may put another rag over it, a little darker in colour. Who knows what they'll be up to? But the point is, I think the Germans are smart enough to realise that I will get onto it. And they know that Germany is starting to pull out of the UN.
The EU.
The EU. Russia's gone, of course. China. They're all teaming up. And we heard this morning how many cities in America have got done away with the dollar.
Well, there was a headline saying that 36 cities within the USA have dumped the dollar.
I mean, you're starting to smarten up, you Americans. I mean, it's about time. You're only about 10 years into this bullshit of having elected skull and bonesmen, and skull and bonesmen are in your Navy, it's in your Pentagon, it's in all business. I mean, really, you are fucked in the head, you Americans. You are amazing. I mean, I thought Australians were stupid, but Americans, they take the cake. However...
Now, so we've got that happening down at Nehemiah.
Okay.
Then the world's focus on Gaza and the levelling of neighbourhoods there. Even the Washington Post reporters themselves who are on the ground are reporting the total devastation, and they themselves are stunned, horrified. But while this is happening and world attention is there, then entire battalions of conscripted youth are being obliterated, vaporised inside the Ukraine by their own Ukraine Jews at the top that are calling the shots. Young men who have been conscripted, these are men from Kiev, and they're saying that they are to report their coordinates where they are to their superiors, their generals, who have been to the front for 1 hour and then vanished, got to get back before dark. And as soon as they report their coordinates, they are rained down upon, and 1,500 men obliterated.
Boys.
These are boys. It seems to be what was happening throughout Bolshevism, the Bolshevik Russian Revolution, where all the young men and the men were annihilated, conscripted and then annihilated, which left the women open for...
Let's say you go into your biblical bullshit and you got the Old Testament, and we're talking about the Deuteronomy and Exodus and all the bullshit stuff. But Israel, which is, of course, these false Khazars that say they are Jews and are not, they are commanded to go and kill a neighbouring nation, take all the virgins for themselves, and any woman that is laid with a man, keep her for breeding stock, children for child molestation, that's always good, and kill off all the men, all the males. This is what they're doing again, because they read the book as being the satanic work that it is, and this is what it is demanded of these monsters to do. Now remember, this is all written by Babylonian Talmud Jews that aren't Jews at all. They are Idumean. So this is where it all comes from. So they then chose themselves as being the chosen people, the chosen race. They are Khazars, they're Orientals, they're Mongols mixed with Turks throughout time. So getting back to the axis of the earth tilting over, it will continue to turn over and probably take another 2 years before it reaches the point where it'll flip upside down, and then probably do it within a few weeks, because it's its creation, and the weather conditions are going to be so severe in certain parts of the world that it has to happen, but you can't click it over too quick, because then it causes all of the things that volcanoes and tidal waves and all that kind of thing. Well, we don't want that to happen, so it's got to be done slowly. But at a, you might say, between the devil and the deep blue sea, so to speak, you've got to do it at a speed that is not going to kill, and at a that is not too fast, but it can't be too slow either. That's because the weather conditions will be rather severe. So if you look up the temperatures of Europe, any city, you'll see that the temperatures since 2011 has all been all over the place. And when we was travelling through Europe, we had good weather. We was noticing that there was no shadows in most of our trip because there was something else giving off light. So we had light in the west and light in the east. So if you're driving down the highway, there was no shadow because light was coming from both directions. No one's looking at that, of course, in Europe. There's only a couple of billion people in Europe. Why would they notice, right? Stupid. Okay, so we noticed. We went to Glastonbury tour. We've got evidence in the camera showing that the axis of the Earth had already tilted, and the reason for that is you've got to go into Vatican I, where it speaks about the churches, how they're built, always facing the east because of the coming of the Lord. They want to be looking towards the light, right? So at Glastonbury tour, there's in 1982, I think it was, they put up a like a compass on a plate set on a piece of stone, which is then on masonry, and it was out. So this was indicating that we were starting to approach the centre line of the Milky Way galaxy, equator, and it was already affecting the Earth, and it was starting to tip. So what I'm amazed at is all these astronomers in the world, they've all been dying like flies because they're talking about the approach of Nibiru, and the magnetic fields are so gigantic, plus the fact that we are crossing over the Milky Way galaxy. You would think in a world to come, you'll have me to deal with, and that is there'll be nothing but truth and honesty. Absolutely. 100%. So if you want to know the truth, you go to my people and I'll tell you, and I'll approve it. It won't be none of this hairy-fairy bullshit that universities don't ever tell the truth. Take your health, take your cures, the invention of AIDS, the invention of or perpetration of malaria, parasites into a certain breed of mosquito, then the breed of mosquito is caused to proliferate all around the world, etc., to carry the parasite bug because it's the greatest killer of all time, especially for children. That is entirely a Jewish plot. They want you dead. That's what you've got to consider. So, in the world to come, that won't happen. That's why it's ruled with a rod of iron, because human beings cannot have independence. Right? As soon as you have independence, what happens is Mr. and Mrs. Jones down the street, lovely people, they want to vote yes or no on some particular subject, but you have a government that is counting the votes with computers, and they can give out any answer that they want. So what amazes me is lobbyists, how you can employ, say the nuclear industry can employ a lobbyist to go and pay them millions of dollars to go and influence politicians so that the Senate or whatever will vote something in or out. I'm amazed at this kind of corruption. It's so obvious. Yet this is what happens in the world. Well, you won't have that in the future. You come and ask me, I'll say yes or no. That's it. Now, I will insist upon truth being the order of the day. It's not that hard to run a kingdom when you base it on truth. Then you don't need to go to the polls. You don't need to listen to any of the bullshit. You've got something to say. Send me a letter. I'll read it. I'll have someone read it, and if it's important enough, they'll get to me. And then we'll make a decision on it. Hey, good idea. Or bad idea. Now, our telephones at the moment, we've got a landline and we've also got our mobile phones. And they're, of course, also compromised. We complain about the phone that's out. Of course, Telstra is the main body that looks after the phones here. Another government agency, all controlled by Jews again. And we can't get no service. With the mobile phones, it's another thing. We can phone each other, try and find someone else. So that's what we're at right now, is the weather conditions. And as I said, when we was in Europe, we would drive through various nations, the next day they'd be flooded. I had the same experience. Where I go, disaster follows. And that's, for example, I was down looking at the solar eclipse in Mexico, and then the following year I was down in Gulf Breeze, Florida. Gulf Breeze, Florida at that time, this is 1991, was supposed to be 7 top military computer operators went AWOL out of the Strategic Air Command in Brussels, Belgium. And they supposedly got onto a plane, got off the base, got onto a plane, flew to America, then dispersed themselves throughout America, all while they're AWOL, and yet they don't carry passports, I'd imagine, because if you did, when you carry a passport, it goes through a computer as soon as you hit the deck, and they know who you are, that you've gone AWOL and you're a top security cleared computer operator. So therefore it's all bullshit. But anyhow, the story was that they had got into the main computer in the American system, and it started spitting out prophecies of the future wars that was going to happen in Iraq and so forth. Of course, it's all planned anyhow. But the big one was that Jesus was coming back to Gulf Breeze, Florida on board a UFO. So when I get down there, I just happened to meet at 3 a.m. this strange character. His name was Jacobson. And he said that his daughter was engaged to one of these men that had come back from Brussels and were driving along, and the state troopers pulled them up, and he was arrested because now the warrant's out because he has gone AWOL from the Americans' Strategic Air Command in Brussels, Belgium. Then it reveals the story, why he did it. And the reason was that Jesus was coming back to Gulf Breeze, Florida on a UFO. And I said to this guy, well, it's not a UFO, it's a Dodge Diplomat, and it's got a blue vinyl roof, and it's parked there in the parking lot. Because we'd driven down through the United States, across to New York, from Western Canada on Vancouver Island, and driven down the east coast and right down to Gulf Breeze, Florida. Now, my wife at the time, she complained every step of the way to finally, when I was in Oklahoma, I drove to the airport there and I told her to get the fuck out. And we had a little tiny van that was pulling behind us, a little trailer. It's only 12 feet long. I had a computer in it and printer and all that kind of thing. And she did not want to go to Gulf Breeze, Florida. I said I was going to Gulf Breeze, Florida right from the time before we left Canada. Now, in order to go down there, I needed the money. The money showed up from the Workers' Compensation Board as a sympathy payment. Like, this doesn't happen. So I get something like $12,000, which is enough to buy the trailer and make the move across America and go down to Gulf Breeze. But I told her, I've got to go to Gulf Breeze, Florida. And she complained and complained and complained. Got to Oklahoma. I drove to the airport. I said, get the fuck out. Got her suitcases out of the van. Gave it to her, put it on the line. Gave her $3,000 or whatever it was. Said, right, go back to Port Alberni. I'm going to Gulf Breeze, Florida. So I drove off. And I thought, I'll give her one chance. And I went around the block, came back again. She's still standing there. She's looking at me, eyes like a little puppy dog. I said, now get in, not one more word, otherwise I'll dump you on the street. Very loving way of saying it, you must admit. From then on, she was happy. But she's the type of woman that you actually had to stand over and threaten before you could get any agreement. But being possessed with the devil, She was a negative Geiger counter. And of course, this is why we end up in Gulf Breeze, Florida. On the way down, we go to the Edgar Cayce Memorial Hospital, another bullshit story coming out of America. And Edgar Cayce was a man who, from the age of 21, he had some sort of a complaint and he went into a coma. And when he came out of the coma, he could diagnose his own problem. And then from that point onwards, he came up with a brilliant idea of being able to diagnose people's problems. Like all he had to do was know the name and address of the person and go to sleep. So they could be anywhere in New York or bloody Los Angeles or anywhere. All he had to do was have the name and the address. So he started up what's called Edgar Cayce Memorial Hospital after his passing in 1943 or 4. He's the guy that talked about the Sphinx and the pyramid and the islands off of the United States, Bohemian Island. And they did indeed find remnants of occupation under the water, because if you know the story of the Mars bumped into the Earth and the flood of all the water came off Mars, and if you look on astronomy programs today, you'll find that the Earth and Mars are spinning at roughly the same 24-hour day. Mars is slightly over 24 hours. This is because the two came together and bumped, and the water spilled off of Mars onto the Earth, raising the sea level up 168 feet. Well, around the United States, of course, there were civilizations that were wiped out in the flood, and that's because the cities were built at the sea level. So if the water rises up 168 feet, naturally they're underwater. So this is what he was able to predict, but he was correct. But where did the information come from? Oh, fishermen. They've seen the bloody thing for years before he was born. So he was an opportunist, and they have this Edgar Cayce Memorial Hospital with 14,000 cases which he was able to diagnose while he was asleep. That's not a bad racket, I thought. So they have this ESP room where people go in and you can sit in front of a machine, and you have a person sitting opposite you, and you've got 5 lights or 5 buttons that lights up, right? So the idea is the person on the other side will pick a star or a square or a cross or a diamond or whatever, or a circle, and that person will press one button. Then the person on the other side has to psychically know, and out of 1 in 5, you take a guess. Or if you are a psychic, you would know. So if the person on the other side presses a circle, then the psychic must get it right. He'd press the circle, press the circle, and bingo, you got it. Oh, got a psychic here. Well, everyone who tries it, the average is 19 out of 100. So you've got the person sitting on one side, they'll press a button. The person sitting on the other side have got to now find out psychically and press the same button. Well, the averages are 19 out of 100. Well, if you've got a chimpanzee on the other side hitting buttons at random and another chimpanzee on the other side, the chances are you'll come up with 19 out of 100, because that's average, right? Because you've got 5 buttons, right? 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. So they got slightly less than the average, 20 at 19 of 100. So my wife's sitting there, if you're Christ, you should be able to do this. I said, yeah, and I said, yeah. So she starts doing it, right? Well, I was up to 97, right? She's hiding her eyes, getting down below the bloody thing, making sure I can't see her. There's no possibility of using the old James Bond trick of seeing a reflection in her eyes and the black of her eyes. Right? She said the same movie. So up to 97. Now, by that time, there was all these tourists from Japan and all over the country coming in there, and we had hundreds standing room only, watching this, and they was oohing and ahhing every time I got it right. So up to 97, she said, you're cheating. How are you doing it? Blah, blah, blah. And she gave me a hard time, right? So I said, all right, I'll get the next 3 wrong, which I did. So I got 97 out of 100, and then made sure I got the next 3 wrong. Well, she drove me insane trying to tell me how I did it. I said, well, I am Christ. You did. That was the challenge. If I am Christ, you should be able to do it, and all I did it. But that still wasn't good enough. By the time we get to Gulf Breeze, Florida, then it gets very exciting when they are predicting. And this is what we find out at 3 a.m. by this Jacobson character, that it was his daughter that was engaged to this man who worked for the Strategic Air Command in Belgium and gone AWOL because he had seen Christ was coming to Gulf Breeze, Florida on a UFO. And that's what I said. It wasn't a UFO, it was a Dodge Diplomat with a blue vinyl roof and it's parked in a parking lot. This is the kind of things still didn't convince it. Right? The year before was in Mexico, and if you know anything about timeshare, it was started in Australia because Australians are the greatest con man of all time, right? And there it was. The idea is you pay $12,000 and you buy a week in a timeshare, and you pay $400 a month for a year for the upkeep of it. So think about it logically. You give them 12 grand, then you've got to pay them $400 a year. So you've got 52 people all giving them 12 grand apiece or more, all paying $400 a year for the upkeep. So you've got 52 weeks that you're getting for your 12 grand. Each person gets 1 week apiece. So you've got 52 times 12,000, then you've got 52 times 400 for the maintenance. It's the greatest scam of all time. Well, that didn't go over too well when people started to wake up in Australia, but it spread all over the world. And when we was in Mexico, this fellow, he had very handsome young fellow, but he had no lips. It was the strangest thing you ever seen. And I couldn't help looking at his lips. You don't like looking at a person that's got something wrong with them, but he was so handsome young fella with no lips. Like the mouth would just sort of go in, and then this pink stuff would come out up to his nose, and there was no defining line of the lips. It was very odd. So he was selling the timeshare things. But if you go for it, you get a free submarine ride. And I said, look, I'm not interested. But this guy insisted, right? And he almost got tears in his eyes. I said, all right, I'll go. Okay. So Pauline wanted to go for a submarine ride. I said, oh, Jesus, all right. And you get a free breakfast as well. So we show up there. And you've got to have a credit card and all that kind of thing. So when they find out that we're Australians, or at least I was, she's English, you can't have your free submarine ride because they know it's a con. They know Australians won't go for it, right? So there's a man there, he was about twice as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this little Spanish guy informs me, sitting beside me, that being an Australian, although I lived in Canada with Canadian visa, can't have this submarine ride or my breakfast, right? So I said something in the line of, oh, Jesus bloody Christ. Oh, don't say the word Jesus. I said, listen, you bastard, you're sitting next to him. And I'm getting more and more pissed off. And I was only saying this morning that when I get angry, watch out. So I picked this little geezer up by the scruff of the neck. He's wearing this little coat. And I held him out over the drink. It was about a 40-foot drop into the ocean. And I've got one hand on the side of the support, and I'm dangling him over the ocean at arm's length. Right now, Pauline verified this sometime later. And this big, huge geezer, he came walking down, and he looked at me, dangling this idiot, he's about 120 pounds, at arm's length. And he turned and walked away. Because he knew no man on earth can take a 120-pound man at arm's length and dangle him over the water unless you are superhuman strong. And that's what happens when I get pissed off. I get superhuman strength. Because the angels do it, right? Well, I should say I slip into God mode. I get pissed off. Right? Watch out. Well, that story was bandied about by Pauline later on. And because she then is regarded as being a lunatic, no man can do that. So, again, she started to turn against me once we got back up into Canada. So this is the kind of thing that witnesses can see. You know, I look forward to a witness that, like my little sweetheart here today, if she sees something, it happens. Right? It doesn't fade over time, and we'll give you an example of that. Out the backyard, we've just put together a greenhouse because we want to grow some vegetables and do it right, get the proper protein, the proper metals, put it into the soil, and show people how they can grow in a chemtrails environment by using pure water and using the sunlight. That's fine. But you can't use the rain that's pouring down because it's all got all these terrible chemicals in it from the GMOs and all that kind of stuff you have in America. So we don't need to do that. We're just doing it for the good of humanity to show you how to do it. So we're setting it up. So I built this greenhouse. And I'm looking at it right now. It's on the back on our patio. Now, while I'm doing this, there's a white bucket that how long ago you bought it? Not too long. And a new mop. And the mop itself was leaning against the post of the patio out the back there. And the bucket was up against the fence. Now, how it got against the fence, I don't know.
Well, we did have a windy day. And it must have blown.
It's possible. That's like, it has to be a pretty strong wind. This is a substantial bucket, right? It had the lid on top, which you put your mop in. And so it's not just a small bucket. It's twice the size of a normal sized bucket. It's possible that the wind could have blown it, but I don't think so. Anyhow, it's up against the fence, and I'm looking at it. I thought I'm going to retrieve that and put it back over where it should be. And I didn't do it. Next thing, we go out and the bucket has disappeared.
Well, no, I saw the same thing. I went out and I saw it there and thought, the wind, my thought was, the wind must have blown it from where it was on the deck there up against the fence. And my thought was, I've got to go and get it. But again, didn't. Something else came up. So Adam smashed our flycatcher glass bottle of sugary water when he was doing the washing up and said, where's the mop and bucket? He got the mop, and then we said, well, the bucket's outside up against the fence. Well, he walked twice around the house and said, no, it's not anywhere. And then so Yah goes out and...
Well, it kind of blown away because we've got a trailer that you can't get past. You actually can't walk past it.
It was a gust of wind but it's been as still as can be since. It didn't blow away. It was up against the fence and it's not there anymore.
So, point being, say, all right, Ash says to me, look, there's the word bucket in your Bible.
A clue.
I said, yes, it is. So we have a look. And it's in Isaiah 40:15. And it says, behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket. They are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. In other words, it's talking about the Lord when he comes back, that all these things that's happening in the world is like a drop in a bucket and dust in a scale. You got it there? Just put top in bucket. Oh.
40, was it? 15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing.
Right, now, getting back to the Jews have to make money on it somehow, so we've crossed over the Milky Way galaxy. They know it, of course. They know one back, but they're going to go out fighting. And so they introduced the carbon tax. There's another big rip-off. So what's the carbon tax? Well, you've got too many cows farting, or you've got something or other, too many vehicles running around, giving off carbon, which, of course, is what trees love. If you've got a tree, CO2 is great. In fact, I have been thinking about growing the plants and pumping CO2 into it and just see what happens. But experiments have been done where CO2 has been pumped into a room growing plants, and the plants, not only do they thrive, they grow exponentially as compared to a normal plant outside in normal air. So the Jews have got to make money on this, haven't they? So what they've done is they got the carbon tax. And they do all the trading and the movement of money back and forwards, and it's all got to go through their agency. So you've got a country like Brazil that doesn't produce a great deal of carbon for the area of the nation, quite large. Brazil is about the 5th largest country on earth. All right, now you've got America. It's producing a lot of carbon. So I say, all right, the Americans can now buy a carbon license off of Brazil. Therefore, they can stay legal by having bought and sold from Brazil is their carbon license. So they've made money. It's traded through the Jews, and the Americans are now paying out this enormous amount of money to all smaller nations who have a carbon access on their allotted amount. So it's not many damn difference. They're still producing the same amount of carbon. The only thing is the Jews will make money of it. Alrighty. So Australia has just abandoned this carbon tax business.
Rolled back the carbon tax.
Yeah. Now, the argument is that with Antarctica, because of the extra sunlight it's having, then they're saying, look, the Earth is heating up. This is caused by carbon. Therefore, we've got to make money off it somehow. But with all the ice that's melting in Antarctica, what's happening? Well, as it turns out, they're saying that the sea level's going to rise because all the ice is melting and running into water. Well, if you take 2 glasses, fill them up, one with ice, and then fill with water up to the brim till you cannot get one extra drop in it. So you get a meniscus, the water will actually raise up slightly higher in a cup. And then you get another cup side by side, and you then fill the other one up to just plain water. And do the same thing, get as much in it as possible, and then let the ice melt. What is going to happen to the glass that's got the ice floating in it? Because the ice is going to be higher than the rim of the glass. So we've got the water level exactly the same. The ice is going to be higher in one. And when it melts, you know what happens? Nothing. Because the continents are like ships. They float on the molten mantle. And if you make it lighter, it'll float higher on the molten mantle. It's all to do with gravity and mass density. So, if all the water pours off Antarctica, the island itself will raise up out of the water because it's not as heavy as it was before. So as it raises up, what happens? The water is poured into the ocean, but it hasn't made the ocean any higher. What's happened is that the Antarctica is raised up on the molten mantle. So it's equalised, in other words. This is what the experiment with the glass of water. Why don't they teach you that in universities? You ask any university student, they'll all say, oh, the water's going to flow out of the cup. No, try it yourself. Get some ice cubes. Now remember, we're talking about a glass of water here fill it with ice and then fill it up with water to the brim and let it melt. But the relationship of ice of Antarctica to the rest of the world's oceans is like 1 cube of ice in a glass of water, not filling it. And I'm saying do it the extreme. Fill it right up.
It's called the displacement factor.
It's the displacement.
And we used to have to do that in primary school, somewhere along the
Well, they
line.
taught you that?
Displacement factor, yes, in science.
Oh, but
But that's
that's
years
before the
ago.
Jews found out about it.
That's years ago. That's when they used to actually teach useful things in school.
Well, I remember that my brother, he learned history in school, and when I went to school, they didn't teach history. So he's 8 years older than I, so he used to tell me things about history, and I was wondering why they didn't teach it when I went to school. Well, the reason is they don't want you to know about your history.
Yes, as the world is awakening
Yeah.
to Hitler and what his
Don't get me started
righteous
on it,
agenda was. Yeah, well, it's going around now. This is what's going on.
Israeli ethnic cleansing.
Yes, this is from Anti-Zionism, not Anti-Semitism, via Press TV. Israeli ethnic cleansing of Palestinians must stop. The Zionist killing machine operating Nazi style. Now, this is what these people here have written in above what Press TV is reporting. Press TV, being a transnational television media network, must adhere to strict industry protocols. In other words, can't tell the truth. And despite its good intentions, is still unable to reflect the real number of casualties. Therefore, in reality, the actual number of deaths and injuries may very well be significantly higher than reported. Because
now, can you believe what we're saying here? They are saying there's a protocol, which means you cannot tell the truth.
That's the industry protocol.
What's this one? Hitler, the awakening has begun.
The awakening has begun. Finally, the world is awakening to the lies and deceit. And this is the greatest story never told that we have seen. Revealing what... oh, there's a truther.
The truth is, Brian, I'll go for that.
Well, that's Joel.
Don't say that.
Oh. Now, we tweeted last night to gain one follower. This same anti-Zionism, not anti-Semitism, says what Zionist Christians think they are doing, and then you see waving the Israeli flag, Christians United for Israel, Zionist Christians, and then on the right the photograph, what they are really doing, and the coffins of Palestinian Christians. This is what the so-called Christians in the USA are really sponsoring. And so I shared that on my own timeline and copied the tweet. I asked, what do you want to say? Because I was tweeting to a man waving, in the USA, a Zionist supporter. Jesus saves Israel. I said, if this man was standing in your room, what would you say to him?
If I had an Uzi, I'd give him a few shots in the head.
Go stand in Palestine with your family and take a bomb from Israel, paid for by the USA Christians. Then tell me Jesus is love.
That's right.
This is exactly what's happening. So out of that tweet, we got another follower through the night.
That's good.
And people from Palestine are starting to look at the tweets. So, and then I shared the nuclear scare.
Well, the whole point is the only thing that's going to save these Palestinians is what we are saying, and then our name, mine in particular, is getting known to the Palestinians as Christ is back and is fighting for them. So how are we going for time there, darling?
Oh, we have
10 minutes to go.
10 minutes to go.
All right, well, you have a little bit of talk now. I've done it all.
Oh. I'm talked out.
You're talked out.
I had a tooth removed
well, that's right.
Tooth extraction yesterday.
You're talked out. I don't believe. Wait a minute, I'll look this up in the stars. What time is it?
10:41. Well, let's go through some. I'll just read some of the tweets that you've been tweeting, so that you know where you're up to.
So what I've said.
What you've said, yes.
I like that. I'm supposed to be. This is me talking, right?
Yeah.
I just find out now what I've said.
No, I've clarified with God. I ask you about every tweet. Yes, send it. Yes, send it. Okay, so
who's making it up? Where's it? Was it coming from my mind or yours?
Well, it comes from your mind. I just pick up on it. I just pick
up
on
see.
it. And then I read it to you and you say, yes, okay, send it. Now, the pinned tweet, this is the one that remains, that you tweeted to yourself on July the 10th. Pope Francis is the Antichrist. He knows of my return. Benedict told him on March the 23rd,
He was the first to find out.
2013 at Castel Gandolfo. He rejected, of course. So everybody who comes to check you out after you've tweeted them, that's what they read. That remains pinned. And I've sent over a couple of links today to your... This one, John Lynch sent, because this is Shasta County where he lives, geoengineering investigation. Apparently there were 400 people turned up at a local meeting, and they are demanding an investigation into geoengineering on heavy metals and the water, etc., etc. So this is where you tweeted to the Jesus Save Israel, Go Stand in Palestine with your family and take a bomb from Israel, paid for by the USA Christians, and tell me Jesus is love. Now that idiot responded and said he would pray for you. Because so I was
Isn't that amazing or not?
You responded back that you're a fool and you're in my judgment. Now, you've tweeted to yourself, because when you tweet to yourself, people come over and read them. What are you saying? So it's just information out there. Yes. So I tweeted from the Revelation, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. Hello, the Jews.
The Jews covered, yeah.
And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. And I just tweak the words a little because it's fulfilled. And behold, I am here. My reward is with me to give every man according as his work has been. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are they that have done my commandments. They have the right to the tree of life and do enter in through the gates into the city. For without, that is without the city, are dogs, and that is the homosexuals, and sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. And I just added in there, that is the Jews who are not. So, now before that I tweeted to FLOTUS, First Lady, Michelle, who is a bloke, Obama. BLGM is the end of LGBT. I created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Dogs and whoremongers have no place to hide. Their place awaits them in hell. And then I send over the radio show. And of course, on July the 26th, it was revealed that it turns out Hamas didn't kidnap and kill the 3 Israeli teens after all, because that's what Netanyahu, the rabid dog, used as a pretense to go in to do what he's been doing in Gaza. And then a German paper accuses the Ukrainian coup government, so that's the Jews themselves, of shooting down the Malaysia plane. Now on July the 24th, Yah said, "Not one Jew will enter the kingdom of God. My angels will gather and cast them into the bottomless pit. My holy seal will never be broken. Their cries will not be heard, and their former existence will be forgotten." From the Christ, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Almighty God, omnipotent. So let's go over to...
Let's go to Nehemiah and have a look at it.
Yes. Turn the camera onto Nehemiah. Show what's going on there. It's very bizarre. It's so stupid.
Well, we're going to upload it anyhow, so...
Yes. Oh, this is this idiot that responded. Jesus saves Israel. I originally said the second coming has been announced, and you lot, that is, standing with Israel, make me sick. And then to Hal Lindsay report, the second coming has occurred. Christians standing with Israel will go to hell with the Antichrist, Francis, or with the link to the Apostolic Letter. And then...
well, that's why the prophecy is that I'm here for the children.
Yes.
Right? The children, they're innocent. But adults, tell you what, I've been to all sorts of churches and they are insane.
Oh, this idiot from Reverend Kevin A. Morrow, he says, I'm praying that the real Jesus, capital J-E-S-U-S, all caps, meaning the straw man Jesus, Christ of Nazareth, the one true God, capitalized G-O-D, so straw man God, will remove the scales and open your eyes to his kingdom, to which you responded, you are a fool. You are in the judgment, the meek inherit the earth. That does not include the deluded standing with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So, there you have it, babe. You're all caught up now.
Hear the laughter of the bird out there?
Oh, yes, totally. Do you hear them? Yes. So on time, aren't they?
Yeah.
We can
Is that it?
end it here. Yes, that's 56 minutes. 56 was a very good year.
Okay.
Hasta la
All right,
vista, baby.
later, Gators.